Attention, Catholics, attention. The insidious and anti-gospel propaganda of the Mormons, backed by an impressive and variegated literature, has found its way to our peaceful plot of Arequipeño earth. Be careful, ye Catholic. Do not let yourself be swindled by these Mormon Yankees who speculate upon your naivete, earning abundant dollars for every Catholic that they can trap in their nets. In 1962, this pamphlet was distributed throughout Peru's second largest city, Arequipa, where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints already had a foothold because of ties that connect deeply, terrestrially, and unsettlingly metallurgically to my argument in this paper, which is this: Mormonism's stereotypic connection to money in the imaginations of the Arequipeños with whom I interacted during my fieldwork there between 2015 and 2019 accesses deeply set fears and dangerous desires, indexing faith-disturbing dialectics of matter versus spirit and subjectivity versus intersubjectivity that tunnel into the very foundation of Arequipeño personhood. The economic, political, and lived philosophy among some groups in the Andes has long been one of cyclical reciprocity with the earth and the community. When wealth accumulates too much in the hands of a few members of that community, it is converted into food and, most importantly, drink, and recycled back into the community and the earth through hugely expensive parties sponsored by those upon whom undue wealth had encrusted itself. Wealth must be liquefied and returned to the cycle, ensuring its continuity. The greatest threat to this cycle is a leaching or crystallization of resources that then get removed from the cycle. In Andean mythology, this most commonly happens in the form of caches of golden objects, such as golden bowls that lure travelers to deep caves from whence they never return. The moral of most Andean fables that I have read is that wealth is not to be trusted. Thus, to those Arequipeños who value sustainable community, Mormonism and its blatant displays of wealth is felt as a fundamental, visceral threat to the cycle of reciprocity in Peru. Precisely because a place is densely knotted with significance, standing as an anchor point in some understanding of the world, new global flows and planetary stresses seem likely to send reverberations through the imaginations and stories by which it was set apart. During my fieldwork in Peru, I focused on the Mormon temple plot in Carmen Alto as a palimpsestic barometer of Arequipa, because as a place, it was densely knotted with significance, even before an Anglo prophet set it apart as holy. This temple, completed and dedicated in December 2019, is now the ultimate solidification of visually striking wealth in a neighborhood that, of all the neighborhoods in Arequipa, is the most allergic to such a blatant display of hoarded money. The temple is right on the edge of Carmen Alto, which, before the urban sprawl of Arequipa spread out to engulf it, was its own colonial town, complete with a town square and a Catholic church, long since destroyed in an earthquake. I spent many hours walking through its largely empty cobblestone streets, trying to ascertain the general sentiment of the villagers toward the construction of this foreign-built edifice in their midst. Most of the townsfolk are elderly, semi-retired dairy farmers and fighting bull breeders, proud of their rugged Lonco identity, similar to Gaucho identity, and also proud of their staunch resistance to anything that might attack their traditional fully Arequipeño Catholic way of life, a life for which, in their eyes, Carmen Alto was one of the last bastions. They are a dying breed, and many of them felt like their failure to ward off the Mormon temple was crowned with a dangerously golden statue was a nail in their coffin. In my trips to Carmen Alto, I not only spoke to the townsfolk, but also to the Anglo-Mormon orchestrators of the temple, the construction workers, the Peruvian Ministry of Culture's archaeologists, and anyone, even the four-legged, who could tell me about the temple. From all these highly contradictory conversations, I was able to piece together a general narrative. Throughout the last half-century, Anglo-Mormon mission presidents in Peru have commented on a miraculous phenomenon. The Lord always opens doors for church property acquisition that were previously locked and barred. In 1960, one of these presidents wrote, "Everywhere along the line, ways were opened up for us to get the exact property that we wished at a very fair price." Perhaps buoyed by this confidence that the Lord would provide, the church did something very uncharacteristic of itself when it bought the land for the Arequipa temple. It bought the land without having permission to build on it. The land it bought was part of a designated green space within an archaeologically protected area set aside by the Ministry of Culture as an intangible patrimony because of its pre-Inca irrigation and agricultural terracing built by the Yarabaya, which have been in continuous use for at least 3,000 years and upon which the townsfolk of Carmen Alto still plant their corn and pasture their animals. It was common knowledge in the town that this space was undevelopable. Yet a few years after the Mormons' billion-dollar corporation bought up the land upon which even the Mormons had no permission to build, Peru's Ministry of Culture suddenly, and perhaps, as the Anglo-Mormon site manager of the temple told me, miraculously changed the nationwide definition of intangible patrimony in the Mormons' favor. Suddenly, as long as they only built on 30% of the land and kept the rest green, the Mormons could not only build, but build the tallest, most contextually mismatched edifice Carmen Alto had ever seen, right behind the sign that once prohibited such buildings. Considering the significance that the Book of Mormon assigns to the ancient inhabitants of the Americas, whom many Mormons believe were more authentically Christian than modern-day Catholics, it is easy to understand why the prophet and president of the church corporation would personally select this archaeologically rich plot of land for a temple. Of the first Mormon temple built in Peru, the Lima Temple, a Church News correspondent wrote in 1986, "Not since the Inca Empire was conquered 4.5 centuries ago has a temple been erected in the northern region of the Andes," meaning that the Incas had true Christian temples, but then the Catholics desecrated them for 450 years, making it necessary for the Mormons to step in and restore true Christian Templar worship to Peru. In their version of history, Mormons were not imposing Mormonism onto a pre-Christian archaeological site in Carmen Alto. They were restoring true Christianity to an ancient Mormon site. Be that as it may, once the townspeople found out that their own federal government, led by President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, himself a former US citizen and millionaire currently under house arrest for corruption, had sold out their cultural patrimony to the Mormons, they took to the streets. The parish priest of Carmen Alto was able to obtain the signatures of almost every resident in Carmen Alto and those of many former residents who still flock back to their hometown during its patron saint festivals to submit a formal petition requesting that the Mormons not be allowed to build in his previously peaceful portion of Arequipeño earth. The press took up this scandal, and with public opinion in their favor, the parishioners' petition and other demonstrations seemed to be staving off the Mormon menace. However, as the Anglo-Mormon temple site manager told me, it just so happened that the Archbishop of Arequipa was a longtime co-presenter with none other than Mormon apostle Dallin H. Oaks at gender ideology conferences around the world. Ideologically in bed with the Mormons, the Archbishop commanded his subordinate, the parish priest of Carmen Alto, to stand down and rescind his petition. On March 23, 2018, on one of my wanderings through Carmen Alto, I stopped and talked to an older woman who lived in a modest brick home right in front of the main entrance of the recently commenced temple construction. She was outside harvesting spinach from her garden. Though she was extremely reticent, we had the following conversation. "What do you say about this temple they've practically built in your front yard?" I say, if you have been baptized Catholic, how is it possible that you're going to become a Mormon? You can't. You would have to renounce, get rebaptized. How do they convince people to do it? A lot of people have told me that they buy converts off with free handouts. Me, why would I want to change religions? I'm in the few remaining years before I go up to heaven. As an ethnographer of Mormonism, I have become accustomed to interviewee tears. My interviewees cry regularly out of joy, sadness, or feelings of the Holy Ghost. But I was not prepared for the type of crying that I was about to witness as our conversation continued. It is still gut-wrenching when I listen to the audio recording. It is a cry of utterly impotent rage, felt at the very core of personhood. But what do you think about them putting this temple right here? Some say that they are ruining the terracing. Others say that it ruins the landscape. Others say that it is pretty. How can we resist it if they've bought it with their silver? The big and the powerful have accepted it. We are tiny compared to them with all their silver. They have money. They can do whatever they want. Oh, with money, they do everything, and they might even be influencing the president as well. But if you were able to stop them, would you stop them? Of course I would stop them if I could. But how can I stop them? as outsiders to all of the insider gaming and lobbying between leaders of countries and leaders of churches. The townsfolk of Carmen Alto came away with one lesson from the sudden fact of inaccessible Mormon opulence on their doorstep. Mormons have money, and apparently money, a material object, trumps the will of a spiritual personage, God himself. The townsfolk had been warned decades earlier about the metaphysical danger that the Mormons' conflation of spirit and matter would pose to their cyclical way of life. Most of the anti-Mormon pamphlets and newspaper articles circulating in Arequipa in the early 60s were permutations of a decree that the Excelentísimo and Reverendísimo Archbishop of Arequipa, Leonardo Rodriguez Bayon, gave in the main cathedral of Arequipa on September 17, 1962. The Archbishop's largest critique of Mormonism focused on the Mormon idea that God is given the power to organize the elements of the world, not to create them, for the simple reason that, according to Mormonism, such elements are eternal. Spiritual materialism led Mormons to claim that gold, as an element, was even more eternal than God. This made the Mormons' materially embodied God beholden to gold. The Mormon God was a person who needs money. The rest of the decree is full of terms laden with danger in the Andes because of the aforementioned mythology. The Archbishop must have known the effect his word choice would have on Andean Catholics as he related the stories of magic gold plates, Mormonism's founder Joseph Smith's property riddled with holes, slippery treasure, and Abrahamic catacombs. The Archbishop told of Joseph Smith's profession as a Saori, or water diviner, and not solely of aquatic currents, but also of precious metals. This induced him to believe in an influx of preternatural occult powers in the environment that surrounds us. Today in Carmen Alto and throughout Arequipa, Mormons are known for buying up the environment that surrounds us. I went to one of Carmen Alto's patron saint festivals and talked to these Lonco cattlemen. One of them had his own theories, which he had heard from trusted sources about the particular patterns of land acquisition he had noticed among Mormons as he looked down from his high, hilly fields upon the expanse of Arequipa below. Mormons didn't just buy random plots of land for their 25 or so luxurious chapels which now dot Arequipa. They don't place these chapels in relation to their concentration of members. It is the other way around. They pick the plot of land first, and then convert enough people in the neighborhood around it to justify building a chapel on it, thus hiding the true purpose of that real estate. As the old man surmised, they buy these plots of land because they speculate, through a combination of Joseph Smith-style divination and modern sonar technology, that these are the very sites where meteorites penetrated the earth anciently, leaving huge loads of diamonds embedded in the earth. Directly under each Mormon chapel in Arequipa, not to mention the temple, is a diamond mine, which at some future date the Mormons will unearth. When that happens, as the old man assured me, todos estamos jodidos. We're all screwed. Thank you.